Good afternoon. Welcome to the Afternoon Fog podcast, a community-based podcast consisting of students and youth workers covering the important stories in South San Francisco and larger Bay Area. I'm one of your hosts, Liza.
And I am Kiara. Today we will be having a conversation with Ms. Keough, otherwise known as Maria Keough, about mental health and growing up in South San Francisco. Firstly, we want to thank you for giving us your time and sharing your knowledge with us today.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.
Our first question that we'd like to ask is, who are you and what do you do at South San Francisco?
The who are you is such a complex opening question. Identity is incredibly complex, right? So to keep it simple and to start off, because we'll get into it with your other questions, as a woman of faith and as a person born and raised in California, the Bay Area, to an immigrant family, to immigrant parents, I definitely am someone who is proud of who I am, where I come from, and what I plan to do. And what I do here at South City is the wellness counselor. Super proud of being the first wellness counselor, really, to South City and to the South City district. There were counselors before me, but really under the name wellness, I'm the first.
Thank you very much for sharing that information with us. Could we talk about your family and your background? How many kids do you have?
It's interesting when you ask about my family and my background and then my kids. It's first when you bring up family, I think about my parents and my siblings and my the generations before me. But I do have two children. I have two boys. I did lose a child prior to my two boys being born, and they are 5 and 18 months. 5 years old and 18 months. I'm the youngest of my siblings, so I have an older brother, older sister. I grew up with both my parents. Around and present, but truly under a single mother household.
All right. We understand that you actually graduated from South San Francisco High School. How would you describe your experience as a student, and what are some key moments of the people that has stuck with you throughout the years?
Great question, because I love talking about being from South City High School. I am a graduate here, from here, an alum. Before coming to South San Francisco High School, I attended All Souls Catholic School, and then transferring to a public school after a Catholic school is a little bit different. I did have a small group of friends that I knew. My best friend from kindergarten was my best friend at high school graduation. But things that definitely stand out to me about my learning experience is I came in thinking I knew everything about being a good student. I knew so much math that I didn't have to do any math homework. Led me to fail my first math class at South City High, thinking I could just rest on my laurels and pass my test without doing any homework whatsoever. Did not work out for me, even though I slept through that class all the time because I knew everything. So failing Algebra 1, at least the second semester, led me into something that we don't even have anymore. It's called Algebra 0.5b, where they used to take algebra and separate it out to 2 years. I was in the Algebra 0.5b class my sophomore year, and something I really remember is I did know the content really, really well. I just didn't want to do the work. Also, in that particular class, there was a huge amount of behavioral things. And, I see it now looking back as a counselor, looking back what it was as a teenager is students were frustrated. They didn't know that if their teacher was breaking down the concepts well enough. They didn't know if their teacher cared about them. It's clear as day, I could actually see an incident that involved a student becoming physical with one of the teachers out of frustration. And that just stands out to me still. And it comes not to say things were good or bad. I think things have always been complex in the learning environment. So I remember that. Also, one of the other very pivotal moments that I clear as day remember is one of the few times I sat with my academic counselor. I probably had more than one meeting, but one meeting stands out. I opened the door, my mom was already there. I had no clue that it was going to be a parent counselor conference or whatever, and I felt embarrassed, I felt cornered, I felt in trouble, and I don't think any of those things were true. I don't think I was in trouble. I think it really was my counselor trying to have my mom support me in ways that she didn't know needed to be supported. But that was one of the first inspiring things. I want to do this in ways where students feel more seen and valued, because it didn't feel great when it had to happen back in the day. So I wasn't the best academic student. I thought I knew too much. I didn't show the work that I did know, but I also did graduate, on time. I graduated on stage, but that's because that's back when we did graduations in the auditorium. Only people who graduated on stage were those who graduated with honors. That was not Miss Keough. Back then, Miss Gines, or Gines. But I was part of ASB, so I spent the last year of I spent senior year also involved in student leadership because I developed a lot of my leadership skills off campus, and by the time of senior year, I wanted to use it on campus.
Well, thank you very much for sharing with us how your mom is very impactful in your life and some of your events that you went through, and you kind of just, overcame those efforts in a way. So thank you.
You're welcome.
You mentioned that you struggled academically. What then led you to pursue going into college and going into graduate school?
It was almost never a question. I knew that my struggles academically had nothing to do with my intelligence. So also being raised by the parents I have, both my parents were able to provide in different ways. My mom came from a highly educated family, and she also herself was highly educated and also had to work 2 jobs to be a sole provider parent. The educational expectation was always there to go to college and beyond. So it just had to be, what do I want to do for work? What do I want to study? And actually, once I graduated high school with my mediocre non-honors grades, I excelled in college. As soon as I got to choose the classes that I wanted, choose the major and minor that felt interesting to me, my record, and I don't want to say speaks for itself, but I did really well. Yeah.
So then what led you to come back to South San Francisco High School and become a counselor here?
It's actually been my dream job. I didn't know what a wellness counselor was when I was in high school. I don't know if we even had something similar. But I was curious coming out of my bachelor's degree if I wanted to be a therapist or if I wanted to be an academic school counselor. And I wasn't sure. So what I did to save time is I did a degree that allowed me to do both. It's kind of like double majoring. So that's what I did for my master's. I mastered in what's called an MFCC, Marriage, Family, Child Counseling, and School Counseling, which allows me to get the credential needed to work on high school campuses. Just because I was so unclear on which route I wanted to go, I wanted to open both doorways. And after about 8-10 years, I'm not sure the number, of doing community-based mental health, I realized I wasn't making the impact that I originally set out to. So instead of pursuing and continuing in the mental health field of becoming like a licensed therapist, an opportunity presented itself to become a counselor here at South City. It would have been under the name of like an intervention counselor. And, I was scared. I didn't think I could work at a school district because I have only known the nonprofit community-based work for so long. But with the support of the colleagues I had at that time, I took the risk to take the job that I really, really wanted. I wanted to be a high school counselor, but not academic. And I just didn't know that was called wellness counseling. But here I am.
Thank you very much. What do you feel now about your impact on the wellness counseling right now, in the moment?
I think that we've only created and made baby steps in what needs to happen for our students, our community, and our campus. I'm hoping that the steps are in the right direction of destigmatizing mental health to begin with, and then also destigmatizing reaching out and getting support. So I do feel like I've started what appears to be a much longer path to wellness for South City students and South City community.
Let's change gears a little bit. We'll ask you a question saying, according to the 2002 Kids Count Data Book, California ranks the number 33 in child well-being. What are your thoughts about this ranking, and what do you think are some key reasons as to why mental health is significant in the issue of California?
So if I read this correctly, this is probably a 2022 data, I'm guessing, out of all 50 states, right? So 33 out of 50, right? I didn't do great in math, but that's not a good thing. My best guess is as to why this is true, why this is our ranking, is because the needs are complex in such a diverse community that California houses, right? Or doesn't house. I'll just say that. We do have the beauty of diversity, but that comes along complex and different issues. So when there's an attempt to be a one-size-fit-all, or here's a general rule of thumb types of either policies or procedures, that's not going to work for a lot of diverse issues and complex needs. And I think that's probably where California has a lot of growth to handle.
Is there any steps that you think that California could take to show this growth?
We probably can track that dollars are being invested into programs, but I wouldn't know if those programs are what we call best practices or efficient or effective, right? So I think we or tax-paying dollars want to know that their money is going to help others. I do think that's generally what most people want, is to serve and support and help those most in need. But I'm curious if folks do trust that it's being spent wisely. So maybe having transparency on how money gets spent and invested would help.
Do you think politics plays a big role within mental health and well-being?
100%. I do think that politics and it actually becomes either a bottleneck, right, or a pathway for people to access care, and that is political. Mental health is health. Health needs care. So that means that we need to have access and availability of health care. And whether people access it because are ready to access it, maybe because of stigma, because of socialization, lots of reasons might stop folks or make people hesitant, but we do need to increase access. So when someone's ready, there's not so many barriers.
Thank you. I have another question for you. What do you think are some barriers for people to access that mental health
do you
or
think
the well-being?
In general, at South City?
In general.
Generally, I do believe that there are multiple social dynamics at play. This could be generational. This can be gendered. This can be, cultural in a lot of different ways, right? There's sometimes a sense of any personal problems get handled within your home, within your place of worship, just behind closed doors type of deal. Other folks might experience, any sign of vulnerability is a weakness, or any sign of anything that's not happy, successful, driven means that you're a problem. And those are a lot of areas that need attention and some relearning and re-education. Yep.
Thank you. So you mentioned that gender could be an issue in mental health. So there was a study by the Survey Center of American Life that showed that 1 in 5 unmarried men reported not having any close friends, and that 1 in every 4 men under 30 reported having no close friends at all. Do you think that this might be linked to gender expectations? Are these things that you might encounter when you work with teenage boys?
I think our young men, or a lot of people, but especially our young men and boys, such a disservice about what their humanity looks like, right? So I do think that there's something called toxic masculinity. In other cultures, it might have other names. But growing up and in my work, I've seen that men are supposed to either be funny or tough, and nothing else. Or anything else is how come you're not just funny or tough, right? So I do think that there are some unfair expectations put on boys and men, or people who want to appear to be strong, and that sometimes close friendships are because of vulnerability. It's hard to always be in good spirits because life doesn't only give you good things. So if you don't know where to go to or who to go to when you're struggling, then that would point to not having really a lot of close friends. Yeah.
Do you think these expectations differ when talking about girls versus guys?
Maybe, but I think that's starting to change too. I think that while typically, generally, a broad statement, so not everyone, but girls are told to taught and told to be more emotionally mature, emotionally vulnerable. I think that there's been a shift for some that strong women think it has to be mirroring what strong men are typically told to be. So I'm hoping that for all people, including vulnerability, wanting to be socially connected is part of what creates healthy relationships. That's my hope.
What can we say or what can we tell boys about this situation, or for them who are in a tough time, with those implied social expectations, or how can we bring them to in realization to overcome those difficult barriers?
Yeah.
What can we say to them?
I think that's tough, but possible. And in some ways, it's start to call it out, to start giving names and the words to what this is. So sometimes when young men or boys start to open up, sometimes it's with their female friends because that feels more comfortable or okay or socially acceptable. So acknowledging and praising and showing up and be like, that's really awesome. I can't believe you're talking to me about this. I'm so glad that you feel safe to do that. And contrastly, if we see a lot of guys, boys kind of doing that typical guy thing of tearing each other down, saying derogatory words when other men or boys are trying to show signs of vulnerability, calling that out of that's not okay. Everyone deserves to feel, or what you're doing right now doesn't need, you have no place to do this, to judge someone else who's feeling that, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm hoping that the more that publicly guys kind of shame other guys for feeling, then there'll be a response and a reaction that that's not okay, right? Instead of just shrugging it off and boys will be boys.
Yeah. I think that's a great statement because we all are our own people, so we all get to make our own decisions with how we want to live.
Okay, let's change gears again for a little bit. Without disclosing names, what issues around mental health do you or quite prevalent among the students you serve?
So what issues do I see are prevalent here for students at South City? Of course, without disclosing names. And from my training and my experience, I think even if students don't name it, there's so much trauma that students are living through. And trauma doesn't have to look like one thing. Trauma doesn't have to be a significant loss or death, right? That is happening for some of our students on campus. There are a lot of more serious mental health things that our students are experiencing, thoughts about their own well-being, right? And how to keep themselves safe. That is happening on our campus. Also, even if there's other symptoms that might get talked a lot about, maybe substances, that still kind of has a root back to some other deeper issue. So it's not just there's a problem with drinking, smoking, whatever. There's always an issue that goes beyond that. That doesn't take a lot of open eyes to notice that we have a huge truancy issue. We have students who are not coming to school regularly. And again, I believe that's more of a symptom to a deeper issue. So trauma, life challenges, sometimes life priority might look different for other students, and they don't really know that, this can't, school and education can help in their future, because right now they have to only focus on the present. There are some survival things that students are working through. But that's part of what I see a lot of.
Do you think there's anything that you would recommend for staff or admin or teachers or anyone to do to make sure that students here are safe?
It's an ongoing learning, a commitment to learning about trauma. That way, students in every interaction feel like they're seen, heard, and valued. And even on their worst days, that they still have a space here. And how to be ready to sit with someone else's trauma. Not just to sit with. You don't have to talk about it. That's what Ms. Keough and Wellness is for. But how do you teach to someone who's going through that? How do you discipline? Because yes, it's still part of our administrator's role to discipline. But how do you discipline if someone's going through or has been through something really challenging? We don't need to, or we don't get to hear everyone's life story, but we have to believe that someone and everyone is carrying something with them when they come to school. When I say something, difficulty, struggle, that everyone's having something that they're working through when they're here. So it's a commitment to ongoing learning.
Thank you very much. Where do you find the joy in work, and what do you in the work that you do? Sorry.
No problems. And I'm so glad you asked this question because sometimes work can feel a lot. So to be asked, where do I find the joy? It's in recognizing that, and I'm a wellness counselor. I do a lot of my work individually. I do some of my work through peer leaders. I consult and collaborate with a lot of other, professionals on campus. The joy is knowing that there are people who care for our students. The joy is knowing that students are really trying their hardest and they're making progress. They're achieving goals. It doesn't matter if that goal looks like a letter grade on their transcript. It could be, oftentimes it's a lot of other types of goals that students are achieving. Sometimes it's in survival. Sometimes it's in thriving. Sometimes it's in reaching out to a safe person, safe place. And I am so proud of every student that continues to progress, work through, and tackle what they are carrying and what they're working towards. So I'm just incredibly honored, proud, and so joyous when I get to see that.
I think a follow-up to that would be, I know that everybody struggles with going to work and doing their job. That's just a life experience. So what do you think is like a driving factor that pushes you to come back to keep working here for the years you've been working here?
Yeah, I've been here for almost 8 years, maybe 7. I don't know how to do math. We've learned that. We've established that. And it's a tough question to answer because you also asked about my family. So being a working mother is incredibly challenging. What keeps me coming back to work is, families have entrusted you, all students, to South City, and you deserve to have people who care about you and care about your success in your corner. And I'm hoping that, I don't get to meet with every student, but I'm committed to being at South City as a caring person who's invested in students' success for as long as possible. Yeah.
You mentioned being a working mother.
Mm-hmm.
So how has motherhood transformed how you work as a counselor?
That's an interesting question that was, has me thinking a little bit on how I want to answer, because I have like a gut reaction answer. So motherhood changes everything. My hope is that I could continue seeing each child and each student and each person for their unique selves. And I learned that really deeply with the children I have, especially my 5-year-old, who is now a district child. He's in one of our district schools. My son has a individualized education plan, so he's in our special education program. And I just really hope that people can continue to see him and that people, see all of you individually for your unique selves, your strong selves, your beautiful selves. So having my own kids has really highlighted that you all are precious. Every student is so precious. And sometimes I think that high school parents don't get to tell that to their high schoolers as often. My kids are still little, so I get to love on them in that huge little kid way. But I'm hoping that high school students still get to be reminded and seen as incredibly precious. So that's how motherhood has transformed me as a counselor.
That's a lovely statement.
Thank you very much for sharing with us.
So before we close, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah. Oh, so much. In case it's not clear, I am deeply proud of South City. I'm deeply proud to come from South City. I choose to have my family, within this district and this system. And that says something. It's not just what happens. It's part of my active choice, right? I think that we've had so many beautiful, staff, students, a community that's so incredibly rich. I don't know if enough individual students feel that way while they're here as young students. I didn't know that I was super proud to be South City Warrior when I was a South City Warrior, but that's what I brought back as a staff person. I really will roll deep for this community for as long as I can. Silly things like wanting to have the bell matters to me. Yeah. I will not sit out in the rain during this football game coming up, but I care about the students who are putting themselves out there. And there's just a lot of good things happening here that I don't know gets a lot of attention. So I just want to reiterate and make uber clear how proud I am to be part of this community.
Okay, one last question from me. What has been one of your lessons learned through your students or through South City?
Oh my goodness. So again, I want to highlight that students are incredibly strong, that they might think that like sometimes it feels like life is over, but somehow students are making a way for themselves all the time. And that is a great sign of strength. A lesson I've also learned, I mean, I knew that about people inherently, but seeing students do it day in and day out is another sign of beauty for me. Another lesson I've learned is, and it was one of the things I was afraid of, is coming to work in a school, in a system that's big, right? There's a lot that's outside of my control, and I can only do the best with what I'm able to do. So there's not, do everything for South City that you can, Ms. Keough. It's like, well, that's kind of within limits, or within the reality check of, S11 and its 4 little doors that we have. So it's still learning how to navigate this system, recognizing that there's limits on everyone, and including me. But the lesson that will stay with me that I see every day and I cherish every day is how strong the students are. Incredibly strong.
Thank you very much, Ms. Keough, for sharing your beautiful insight.
Aww.
And we want to thank you to all the listeners. Please share this episode with your friends, within your networks as we continue to grow. Thank you very much, South City. Have a great day.